Geek Out! The opening of this film establishes right away that it hates the viewer pretty hard. Like the news, the feel of the news. Like I watched this movie today with like the perspective like now, like if this were to happen right now in 2018 and the news felt way too familiar and like I am dead ass convinced nobody got the point of RoboCop. It's a little depressing.
Well, let's start this officially.
Yeah, let's start this off.
Let's start this officially.
Word.
3, 2. Hey, boys and girls, fellow OCP employees and members of Old Detroit.
If you're a member of the corporation, we're happy to have you. If you are listening somehow from Old Detroit, fucking gross.
I'm Jake, and I have brought back a dear friend of mine who, if you have been following anything we've been doing, especially my solo stuff, I had him on for one of my favorite episodes I've ever done for the Lethal Weapon 2 episode of Guys Like Us Don't Die at Toilets. That's Mr. Mike Sains. Welcome back.
Hey, guys. It's good to be back. It's good to envision what the concept artwork for this episode will look like.
Yeah, who knows what this is going to be, man. I just know that, like, I did this, was doing the Superman podcast. That's still a thing. That's still going to be a thing. And that's the great thing about that. And Mike, I'll have you on for that somewhere down the line too. But the great thing about that is it was kind of once Justice League was done, I was like, you know what? It was the end of the year. I kind of had, I think, 6 solid episodes of talking to my friends about Superman, but I can always go back to that eventually. You know what I mean? But I kind of wanted to shake it up, do something different. And my original plan, which I'm going to do one day, I swear to God. But it is like, once I start this other project I want to do, it's pretty much going to take up the rest of my podcast life, and that is reviewing every single episode of Masters of the Universe. Every single episode. The original, the new adventures, the 2002. By the time the new movie will probably be out, I mean, it's going to be like all He-Man, all Skeletor, everything.
You're going to do the Frank Langella Skeletor film?
Of course, yeah.
Canon films,
yes.
You guys.
But I don't want to lock myself into that yet.
Sure.
You know?
We are on the horizon of maybe getting into that. RoboCops 1 through 3, the remake, and then as soon as the announcement for the show came through, the first question I got was, are you going to do the Canadian TV show?
Yeah.
Are you doing the animated series? I was like, this is a prison.
Yeah. You know, at any time, Mike, if you feel like you need to eject out of here, you are free to run.
RoboCop out.
Yeah, RoboCop, run screaming. But we've decided, at least for the time being, because I've been on podcasts where we've come up with titles, and this is a RoboCop podcast.
Yeah,
by the way.
This is a This is a RoboCop
yeah,
podcast.
We're going to be talking about, like Mike said, for sure, you know, the 4 films that have been released: RoboCop 1, 2, 3, and then the 2000, I believe, 14 reboot, remake, whatever.
Poor
you want to call
Joel Kinnaman.
And yeah, so the title for as of now is Murphy's Jaw, which I just love that. You know what I mean? Like, I just got a gut feeling when Mike told me that. I was like, Murphy's Jaw, I like it. Like, Murphy's Law would have been too on the nose.
Like the film.
Yeah, like I was thinking of, like, you know, Pod 209 or I can't remember the other ones I was doing, but like Murphy's Jaw just sounds good. I like it. But who knows? You know, if we get inspired during this episode, hell, if we get inspired during the 4th episode, what do we name the thing?
Yeah, I was thinking like Metalheads, the RoboCop show, or like Deadhead Comes Alive.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, but they're all just too music specific. And for my jam friends,
exactly. Yeah,
no
my metalhead friends would be like, "You didn't talk about Merciful Fate once on this podcast." Who knows? Maybe we will. Anyway, so we watched 1987's RoboCop.
Yep, just recording this. We are fresh. I am newly traumatized with 3 brutal gun scenes, and I really would enjoy some cocaine right now.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that is that's running through that movie, running through the veins of everyone in the movie except from Alex Murphy. But no, but what I wanted to do before we jump into the movie itself, Mike, is I want to talk a little bit about RoboCop in your life.
Sure.
How did he come about? Because, you know, when were you born?
84.
84? Okay, so yeah, I mean, I'm 86. So, like, we're, you know, granted, I'm not watching RoboCop as a 1-year-old. I will tell the story after you, Mike, about which I've told plenty of times, but I'll say it on here just for records keeping sake. But RoboCop, you know, came in my life at a pretty young age, and, you know, we're of the 80s, as is Alex Murphy. So give the people listening how RoboCop kind of entered your life.
Sure. So when I agreed to do this show, that was the first thought I had. Like, what's your earliest memory of RoboCop? And I think, the question is, when did I first become familiar with RoboCop? That's for my talking YouTube fans out there. That's a podcast reference. I'm like 5 or 6. RoboCop is on the television. The adults aren't around. And we had just...
Perfect storm.
We had just gotten...
Cocaine is on the table.
MTV was still Channel 77. And, yeah, we had access to home box office, and I just turned it on, and RoboCop was on. Or either that or it was like a cassette that I had access to. And every action movie from the 80s, like, for some reason, was... It very much like it made kids want to see it. Like, RoboCop is a horrifically violent film, but like on the surface, the posters, the old artwork, the video game, I needed RoboCop in my life.
The poster is out of control.
It's
perfect.
It's for children. Like, and RoboCop was actually marketed to children, and I remember my first instinct upon watching RoboCop, because I had seen my very first R-rated film that I ever saw was The Last Boy Scout with Bruce Willis and Damon Wayans. Yeah, that magnificent, iconic film. And that compared to RoboCop was it was actually a pretty good primer, because it was an action comedy where you're supposed to be aware, oh, this is violent, but also that was funny. RoboCop was funny in the way where, as a little kid, my first reaction was, none of these scenes have to be like this.
Well, I mean,
over the top.
As a little kid, RoboCop, there's nothing funny in RoboCop. You won't understand the satire of RoboCop. The
satire is completely lost. It's just this is so, to use today's terms, it's so extra. It's so, even today, we watched the unrated
Criterion Collection.
Discontinued Criterion Collection.
Thank you,
Laserdisc.
Mr. Chris Nolan, Mr. Geek Out Chris Nolan.
He provided to us here by the studio, and I have to say, I didn't remember this cut, and this version is way more violent, but upon seeing it now, at least I knew it was going to be like that. As a kid, that scene where he gets blown away is just oh, I'm never going to forget this.
Or Murphy gets blown away? Yeah,
ever.
I mean, the quick background to my kind of introduction to RoboCop is it's the first movie I ever remember seeing.
Wow.
And I have a terrible memory, by the way. So I remember being about 5 or 6, and my parents are not pop culture savvy. My dad is a born-again comic fan, which cracks me up, and I love it, because we go to cons now, and he's a huge Daredevil nerd. But back then, it wasn't on his mind.
Right.
None of this was on his mind. And so I think, filling in pieces that I don't remember, but I had to assume they must have saw the VHS, the cover, right? And been this can't be for adults. You know what I mean? It's RoboCop.
It's a robot cop.
Part man, part machine, all cop. One of the all-time taglines, right? And so, again, they're not doing any research looking in the back, because you see R and all that kind of stuff. And they, we'll watch it, see what happens, whatever. And somehow we get to, and I just realized this watching this with you guys in the unrated cut, we must have been fast forwarding, because my parents would have turned it off when the guy's getting blown away in the boardroom. But I distinctly remember Murphy's death is what set everything off. So, my mom is very anti any kind of violence. Her barometer for violence is, we saw Pirates of the Caribbean, the first one, a long time ago. She got mad at us for not warning her that there were going to be skeletons in it. That's her level of violence.
Oh, boy.
You know what I mean?
Oh, boy.
So anyway, you think of this, And so she loses her freaking mind. She's yelling at my dad, Greg, turn this off. I'm throwing a fit, because all I want to see is RoboCop. I don't care about nuance and satire, and I just want to see RoboCop.
It's where's this robot man I was
still
promised?
One of the coolest looking suits, and to me, I think, again, seeing it at such a young age, that will nothing's cooler to me than the RoboCop outfit. So I'm throwing this huge fit. My mom's going, put on Ninja Turtles, the Ninja Turtles are, put something on, Greg, put something on. And I'm going, I've seen that. I just want to see RoboCop. I just want to see that. Yeah, I just want to.
No, I need new stimulus.
Yeah. I'm 5. I just want to see RoboCop. So my mom leaves the room disgusted, right? She's like, this is horrible. And so my dad fast forwards, and somehow I remember, and I said this when we were watching the movie, I remember seeing the scene of all the police officers with their guns sticking out at the shooting range, and you see RoboCop's gun. And I remember I'm going, oh my God, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. That's RoboCop. And it pans over and and I look over and my dad's asleep. And I watched the rest of the movie.
Oh, this is all me.
And I watched the rest of the movie. And I remember there was this image in my head for the longest time that I remember watching that movie. Because I watched it, really young as a 5-6-year-old, whatever. And actually, I didn't watch it for years after that. Like, for years. Like, I'm in college when I'm watching it again. And I remember thinking the scene where he's throwing Clarence Boddicker through the glass, you have the right to remain silent, and all that kind of stuff. My 5-year-old brain had warped that scene to where, like, it's that. I remember that being the most violent thing in the world because his face is all cut up. I remember his head being like cracked open.
At that point, it is just a robot torturing a human man.
And I remember like it being this visceral like brain, like it's just horrible. And then I remember I was at a mall in college, and they had a DVD, like the old like cardboard flap, like overlocked, horrible DVD of it, but it had the that cover. And I remember looking at my buddy, I was like, I haven't seen this movie in years. Like, I knew RoboCop. I'd seen him around.
Right.
I think I'd seen 3. It was, when IMDb was doing free movies.
Basically how I feel about Rambo. I'm aware of his existence.
Yeah. Like way, I'd already gone through my Rambo phase. But I had seen, I think, RoboCop 3 when IMDb used to play movies for free. I don't know if they still do, but like they with ads. And I was like, I've never seen RoboCop 3, and I watched it and I was like, okay,
never mind.
Yeah, we'll talk about that when we get to it. Lucky us, Mike. But I remember being like, I have to buy this movie. It was like $5 in the bin. I was like, I'm gonna buy this movie and watch it. And I remember watching it and getting to that scene and being like, nothing that I remember happened in that scene. Like, it was, like this idea that I had created for myself. And I remember finishing it, and I was kind of like bummed. I was like, what was that movie? Like, and again, I'm like 20 something, like early 20s. And I'm going like, that's not the movie I remember. Like, cause as a, it sounds so insane, but as a 5-year-old watching RoboCop, he's the good guy. He's the knight in shining armor, running around saving the day, not understanding the satire. So like having the new stuff, and it's weird to say, but talking about it now, it's like watching it as a 20-year-old, I felt more like a 5-year-old. What I mean? Like, it was a totally weird experience, and I kind of didn't watch it for like another year or two. I was like, I don't know, like, that was a really weird thing. And it wasn't until like I'd watched Starship Troopers later on, really got into more like the people behind the movie. Peter Weller, Paul Verhoeven.
This is a whole part of this conversation we got to get into.
Yeah. And I remember getting and realizing more of the nuance of what it meant to create the movie, and something that I am obsessed with. And Mike, you're going to hear me say this over and over through the however long we do this podcast. And it's going to drive me insane probably, but the movement of Peter Weller, like how he moves in this movie, I am forever fascinated by that in performance. Like, I think Peter Weller's performance in this, people might overlook it because he's in a robot suit and it's is a robot and it's goofy and blah blah blah, but like the way that he moves in this is astounding to me. And I always like jokingly like say it's like violent ballet, because like especially in the cocaine shootout scene,
right?
And we'll go plot more
the Orangina cocaine,
the Orangina cocaine. But I'm telling you, like the way, like there's a shot where he gets like a ricochet in the back of the head, and the way he turns and everything moves at its own thing. And I always jokingly say, like, try to walk to the bathroom like RoboCop would. You would lose your fucking mind.
I mean, like, it is funny to hear you say that, because I'm imagining now Peter Weller having like a popping and locking consultant on the set of like, now show me how you would do this crazy legs.
Well, yeah, there is a pop and then a lock. But like,
am I hitting the pop at the right place?
But he also talks about how, like, when he finally saw the finished footage of it with the sound effects added in, it all came together. Because when you're doing it without sound effects, you kind of look like a nut.
We've had this conversation about a couple scenes in this film. That's a whole lot, like the score elevates this film.
Oh, it does.
To a level
It really
where
does.
Like kind of absurd. But getting back to, like, you brought up a point that's really important, I think, for a lot of people. And I'm going to ask the listeners, what do you remember RoboCop being like? Did you watch it before you started listening to this episode of the podcast? And my question to you is Peter Weller or Murphy's murder how you remembered it? Because in my mind, there is a part of the top of his head that just goes. And it wasn't like that at all. And it's just like this little thing.
Isn't that crazy, though? Like, we remember this movie as it's violent. It's a violent movie.
So
it's an ultra violent satire.
My own concept of violence projected onto the scenes themselves.
Yeah, and I mean, it's crazy because for the longest time, and I really didn't see when I watched, quote unquote, watched it the first time as a 5-year-old.
Right.
I didn't really see Murphy's death. You know what I mean? That was something like not shown to me.
There's so much I didn't see until this viewing today.
Mm-hmm. Really?
Like, just in the I haven't watched RoboCop since the inauguration. I haven't done a Paul Verhoeven film since the inauguration.
He's like, just real quick, he's seriously become one of my like favorite directors because of his balls on that guy.
And the shit that he cynically gets correct about what modern society could have become. It's like, I used to read and be obsessed with the works of Hunter S. Thompson. I still am. Revisiting him now is more important than it's ever been.
Sure.
And reading like Generation of Swine from the 1980s and the rise of big business tycoons in the late 70s that create these large multinational corporations that can't be touched. It's like, oh, fuck. Paul Verhoeven's on this exact same wavelength.
Yeah.
And here is an action parody kind of like body horror film.
Sure.
Because one of my initial reactions as a kid was I felt so sad for RoboCop. Like,
it's a sad character.
I didn't look at him like Marty McFly, who's I just like look over here. Like, he's one of those characters that like he's in an impossible situation, but at every turn this is like fun, and he's got like a crazy sidekick, Marty. But like RoboCop, what happens to him. He lives in an endless Mobius strip of pain like Frank Castle, but when he gets up, he's still in a prison of a body. And I just remember as like a 5-year-old, like activating my emo-ness, like I feel terrible for this man. Like, oh my God. And you brought it up before, the female counterpart, his partner, they never play them as a romantic interest. She just looks at him with the most pity.
But she also sees him as her own failure.
Right. That and like an abomination of science, kind of like, this isn't right. I have to help this thing that I used to know as a man.
Exactly. You know, that's something that I am obsessed with. The I don't know how to put it really, but like to give you an example, like the Darth Vader type character, and I'm not talking necessarily about good and evil right now.
But
we can talk about that later.
In a cell.
But the locked in the cell, the loneliness, because like RoboCop's like the loneliest motherfucker.
So fucking lonely.
Because
his best friend is a chair.
My favorite, no, I mean not my favorite, but like scenes. I love watching the movie because once I started to like realize more of the background of the movie and really fall in love with it for the pieces and the nuances of the performances, especially of Peter Weller, and becoming a bigger fan of Paul Verhoeven. Like, I watch this movie all the time.
Yeah.
And on the Geek Out podcast, it's like half joking, but not really. For me, like I think this is like a pretty damn perfect movie because of just everything like you touched on, and we will touch on it plenty of times throughout this whole series. But the idea of like the little shots in this movie that I love are him behind the wheel of a car, silent, looking for crime,
just monitoring. Yeah, like,
somewhere a crime is being committed.
There is no humanity to it. I mean, like, so like the thing that we can compare that to in modern times is like Daredevil on the rooftop, Frank Castle listening to the scanner, all those Netflix shows where they're like listening for the crime and they act. But there's humanity, there's motivation behind all of those characters. We know why Frank does it. We know why Matt Murdock does it. RoboCop is just acting in the best interest of Omni Corporation and has no free will and only observes the 3 directives that he's actually given.
Sure.
And like every piece of the path that he's given to realize I used to be a person is given to him simply over the process of doing his job in old Detroit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's also too like when you break down the basic of what is the movie RoboCop. Cop. Murphy goes from what is seen as what we're told in the movie by other police officers,
right,
a pretty easy precinct that he comes from.
Yeah.
And he requests this because he wants this. He wants to prove himself. He wants to be that cop. And this is something that if we get down to like the TV show, like instilled by his dad as a cop, and something. So he comes into this. And I'm not super familiar with the TV show. I remember watching like an episode maybe. It used to be on Netflix, but I remember reading a little about it before we started this. And I remember like the background of like you meet his father a lot in it, and you see where that comes from. You know that his dad was a cop, and so
that's going to be another thing as these episodes go on, like the humanization of the RoboCop franchise over the years. I'm not sure how I feel about it. This is definitely the OG, like raw version where his family just disappears.
Yeah, I mean, and that's something that is kind of insane. Because
yes, his wife never like looks in on this piece of meat that's been taken by the corporation,
and that's the problem I have with 2, and I'll save that for 2. But like she is introduced again in 2, and it's kind of a whiff thing, swing and a miss. But so he becomes he's basically, for what we're led to believe, it's his first day out on patrol with Lewis, right, and brutally murdered, like. Just eviscerated.
On his first day of patrol, he faces off with the city's greatest villain.
Yeah,
like
it'd be like if Joseph Gordon-Levitt were led to believe becomes Batman.
Yeah,
and his first day as Batman, he comes up against the Joker.
Yeah, riding with Bane.
He's like, at least give me the Riddler, dude.
Yeah, can we at least just work our way up to this?
Oh yeah, he drives up and the fucking Arkham Asylum thing opens and all of the rogues galleries there going, "Welcome to Gotham, motherfucker!"
Just rifling through mail bins of single dollar bills.
Yeah.
Just like, and that's the introduction. Like, another thing I love about this movie is how ungraceful it is. There's no grace to this at all. And I think the best personification of that is the villain, which Red from that 70s show.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing he does, you see him on a news clip, like they establish he's killed like 31 cops or something horrible like that. And, the first time you actually see him functioning in real life, he is like just throwing bills into a postage
beating the
bin,
shit
like,
out of everybody in the
right,
car.
You fucking idiots!
Yeah.
And Ray Wise, pre-Twin Peaks, is like there and kind of buff and standing out like a sore thumb, and all I can see. But they are all just a fucking mess. Like, he's not really a supervillain. He's just victimizing a completely dysfunctional city.
He's just chewing the hell out of every piece of scenery in the best way possible.
He eats this film alive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the crazy thing too is I'm trying to like think of like a quick blurb on how to like get like a pitch to this movie, and it's Cyborg solves his own murder. You know? Which, like, I mean, there's obviously a lot more to that.
Okay.
But the idea of a cyborg solves his own murder
Right.
is fucking wild.
Yeah. And, like, so I've been trying to figure out my elevator pitch, too, and I can't stop doing a social commentary. Like, I've been trying to remove myself from that, but it's capitalist Jesus rebels against his creator.
Yeah.
That's basically what it is. Like, Paul Verhoeven has said a couple times that like the intention of this film was to like subvert American exceptionalism or like our tropes in our country, and it's very pointed in that like it's in old Detroit and all the cars are SUXs.
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
like
the 6,000 SUX,
the great American tradition of sucking.
Yeah,
the corporation buys the city and profits from all of the basic services, police, education, hospital care, like anything that should be a public service is now owned and privatized by a corporation who has no self-awareness, watches one of their executives get murdered by an experiment at a desk, and they're just like, well, how can we fix this? How can we fix our bottom line?
Yeah.
And that's the tone that RoboCop exists within. Like, we root for him within the context of him obeying those people and that social construct, and it's really, really disturbing to me, like how many parallels to Jesus Christ I could actually find in this movie.
Sure. Well, yeah, like you said, Paul Verhoeven has like said it multiple times.
It's disturbing that we didn't like. Upon viewing this, we don't see it outright. Like, our whole country saw Batman versus Superman. They're like, Jesus, with the Jesus allegories, we get it.
Yeah.
But we see RoboCop, and we're like, well, that was just a good film.
Yeah.
Didn't get
well,
the
it's
point.
funny because like the more kind of watered down way I would pitch it, because I agree it's very much the Jesus thing. It's Mecha Jesus Cop. Is also just from a nerd enjoying other characters things. It's 21st century or 20th century Lone Ranger.
Yeah,
where you know you get this guy who now granted taking different kind of liberties with the Lone Ranger, but this idea if he wants to be if we want to play on the father thing, with the Lone Ranger or whatever, he wants to be that ranger. He wants to live up to this idea of the of the being the Texas Ranger. Is slaughtered in the process. Is brought back to life by Tonto as this mystical thing. Wears a mask and extracts ultimate and the thing about the Lone Ranger thing too is like in the old TV show, he never shot anybody. He only shot the gun out of their hand. And so it's something that I've noticed just watching RoboCop over and over again. Granted, RoboCop shoots a lot of people. He shoots bad people, whatever. But something that I like so much, and he does it in this movie, and he does it so much in RoboCop 2, which I'm very excited to watch, because some of the best shootouts in RoboCop's history are in RoboCop 2.
And it is one of those franchises where did a single director take hold of more than one film of this franchise?
No.
It is one of those like we're all just doing our own.
We're just doing our own, yeah.
RoboCop.
Yeah. But he's one of those guys that he will wait to get fired upon before he starts firing, you know? Like he's very much like, and like you're saying, there's a part of it that I understand where you're coming from, that he is following OCP's thing. But there's also a part of me that thinks this is also 100% Alex Murphy, in the sense that Alex Murphy would never wish this on himself, but Alex Murphy wants to be the best cop he can be. He's challenging himself in the beginning of the movie to be that best cop.
Right.
And he's given this horrible nightmare scenario. Well, now you have to live this forever.
So,
you lose your wife, you lose your kids. Because he does, Murphy lives by those 3 prime directives already.
Right.
Now, granted, I think, and this isn't, I wouldn't say a fault of the movie necessarily, but because it's a perfect movie, of course. But God's favorite movie, the perfect movie that is RoboCop. But we never, well, that's not true, because we do get to see a bit of the family side. And I think it's such a smart move that at the beginning of this movie, I think his final thoughts on this earth, because Murphy is legally dead. That's a huge difference between...
They're very directly saying that a couple times in the process.
And that's a huge difference of this and the reboot that I think is very interesting. Is in the reboot, he's never dead. At least I don't think he's clinically ever seen as dead. That could be the case when we get there. But I remember that being a difference when I watched it. In OG RoboCop, his final thoughts are of his family. And you think his final thought with his, well, and also being murdered, but like you think his final thought with his wife is one that is coming from a place of anger, like a fight.
He never once actually gets angry, and I thought about that. Like he gets mad and punches the television out of frustration, but like every time that he goes to rebel against the corporation, it actually felt like oddly amicable. Like he provided proof. Like he didn't just straight up off the guy with who ended up having long arms on the way down.
Dick Jones,
Dick Jones with the long arms. He actually was like, "No, here's your proof. I'm going to still be a good cop on this before I murder this man."
Yeah. Well, again, he is. That's kind of Murphy, though. Yeah. Like Murphy's not the kind of guy that's going to be this vicious son of a bitch. He's going to be the Murphy would be the guy that. I don't know. It's hard to put in the words, but like RoboCop is just an exaggerated Alex Murphy.
Yeah.
Dehumanized.
Of
course, dehumanized early on. But I love that idea that like, we're as an audience, we're tricked to believe that we're led to believe that his thoughts of his family with his, "Hey dad, can you do that?" with TJ Laser,
right.
and then his wife in the thing. I'd like to think that's his last, like he's leaving for work that day, right?
Right, yeah.
And she's going, "Hey, I just need to tell you something," like really pissy. But then we find out later on that she's like, "I love you." And it's like this kind of thing. And that moment of him walking through the house, and it's kind of beautifully shot, like you were saying with the score, is just fucking astounding in that moment, because it loses all metallicness to it, because a lot of it has like the like the not the Terminator type thing, but like there's synth in there, of course. And whenever he opens the door, it's the most 80s, wow,
very pulsating.
Yeah, it loses that, and that's the moment where Murphy starts to shed a bit of that, but also in the process, talking about him being a tragic, sad character.
Yeah,
the moment for me that always is just the saddest fucking thing in the world for RoboCop is when the police force turns on him and just guns him down in a parking lot.
Boy, oh boy, does the police violence not hold up well. Like the police against the civilians, the police against the police. The talk of police striking in this film is in this current environment from 2015 to 2018 right now, striking.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know that's like a pun, but
Yeah.
it's still like to actually hear in a film cops go, this isn't right. Our guys keep dying. We don't want to do this. And then there's like this term where like, we're not going to fire on one of our own. And like people walk off
Mm-hmm.
in like support. That's kind of happening now.
Well, yeah,
And
I
it's
mean,
weird.
yeah,
to
I mean,
see it like in a film where it's like, wow, this really nails a lot of the future on the head.
yeah, I mean, you mentioned that before, like, you know, the moment where they are told, because again, it's a lot of it is like they are told through OCP, RoboCop's gone rogue in the OCP building. He's attacking high executive, you know, whatever. That's the information they're given.
Right.
And the cops arrive there. Okay, RoboCop's gone rogue, right? And like you said, they go, we're going to fire on RoboCop. And there are the cops. There's that, you know, there's that camaraderie of the cops going, no, but that's one of our guys.
That's
though.
Murphy.
That's Murphy. And sure, some guys are going, that's not Murphy. That's RoboCop. There's
It's just a big metal boy.
Yeah. And then there's other people going, our orders are through OCP to take this guy out. And there's
Right.
the other ones that go, well, that's not right. We're leaving. And then you get this, like, you know, the Jesus metaphor of just him being, you know, just eviscerated
Yeah.
by the police force.
Actually hitting the cross shape as the bullets are hitting
and
him.
the moment of it's not enough. I mean, like that like horrible moment of them advancing on him. And again,
Yeah.
and him
Yeah.
just being obliterated. And the thing too
Wow. So are you saying that's the passion of Murphy right there?
is like, yeah.
Holy fuck.
Like he you know, and he is just I mean that is the I mean I guess you could almost call it the death of RoboCop, because
Yeah.
after that he loses the helmet,
Yeah.
comes Murphy again, and then of course, you know, RoboCop 2
Wow.
will bring him back. But yeah, I mean he is again, if we want to keep the Jesus thing going, that is his, you know, quote unquote crucifixion right there.
Yeah, because like the proper path is like Murphy is pre-revelation Jesus. He's like 31-year-old Jesus. And then when
I am glad that they don't go, hi, I'm Murphy, 33, you know.
33, this
Yeah.
is where this happens.
Yeah.
But like
Or it took him 3 days to get rebooted.
3
or
days
whatever.
to get
They
rebooted,
never
and he's like
drop
he's not in the lab, and then he is in the lab.
Yeah.
So like this is where like we do have to point out how on the nose the naming of the characters in this film are, starting with Officer Murphy, where Murphy's law can and will go wrong on this guy. Everything does go wrong on him. And like him walking into the office as like rip-off Deckard Light in his bad shirt without the tie or overcoat, fashion head here. It's like Jesus hadn't gotten the memo that you're like the savior yet. And then when he gets the notice, he's still just kind of obeying the rules. And my question to you is, at what point does RoboCop actually activate and become Murphy again? When does he go when does the singularity occur?
Okay, that's interesting because I don't know that answer, but we're going to try to figure it out right now.
Yeah.
So the moment he starts to become Murphy again, I think the trigger for all of that, the very easy trigger for that, is him realizing that Murphy's dead. I think that's the beginning of it, because he gets a face, he gets a name, he gets an address. So now he's a cop. I'm going to do detective work. I'm
Right.
going to this place.
Yeah.
But then he goes there and he gets the picture on Halloween with his son dressed up as the devil, him with his wife, you know, him watching TV with his son.
Yeah, because he has visions in the lab when he's talking to his best friend, the chair.
But again, they're not complete. You know,
Right.
they're not complete
It's
visions.
just he knows that something is underneath the surface.
Exactly. And I think it's the moment. I don't know. I may think of this differently as we go on, but like him punching the TV, punching the screen, and maybe this is super up my own ass here, but punching technology in the face, and like now I'm gonna go literally go against OCP. Like that whole scene is him, the beginning of Murphy coming back, because then you get him, you know, standing up to OCP, getting gunned down by the police, you know, officers he worked with, and then, you know, Lewis and him reconnecting,
Sitting in the warehouse, taking off his helmet.
sitting in the warehouse, and then seeing his face for the first time.
Which is arguably, in a movie full of very horrific things, one of the top 3 most horrific things. It's just a face.
I think it was you that made a good point, where he tells Lewis, "You're not going to like what you're going to see," and then you're like, "But he doesn't know what he's going to see."
Yeah, at no point have
potentially
we established that.
You know, it's not established, but yeah, okay, maybe when he was being put together, but I doubt it.
Yeah, I
You know what
highly
mean?
doubt it.
he probably has an idea that like I've seen Murphy's face, but I haven't seen Murphy's stretched out face on cybernetic shit, you know,
which is disarmingly creepy.
Because I told you for the longest time when I was a kid, I thought they cut his face off and just put it on an X, like a
looks like that.
Yeah, but yeah. So, but I don't know. I that's just me kind of like rambling out loud, thinking where the beginning of Murphy is. What about you? Like,
yeah, I thought at first the visions were the thing, but it like you say, it's where, and this term was not coined by me. It was when the information dagger, I think.
Oh,
he breaks out his little spike and inserts it into the port that no one actually has in all of their technology.
Yeah,
and gets the Primrose Court or street address, and like, I used to be a person, and like, you and us, and I think an entire generation of people have pointed out this amazing facial performance by Peter Weller that pretty much solely exists in Murphy's jaw. And that weird butthole mouth he makes when he gets really upset.
Well, he fucking, like, all he has is his mouth to sell it.
And his the chest work. There's a lot of chest and back.
He does very
work.
Yeah. When Prime Directive Classified 4 pops up, and he's shut down like that.
Yeah, and I'm now that I say that, I'm thinking about how far apart his pecs are.
Yeah, they are weird.
Very far apart.
I'm also fascinated that he has wonderful calf muscles.
I mean, his calves are so nice they actually split up the middle like a like a chicken breast is when you fillet it.
He has the best calves I've ever seen on a robot.
So nice. Like, I want to go home and do squats and calf raises.
Yeah. I mean, that's one thing Murphy has to look. He's like, at least at least I have nice calves.
We started this podcast so Mike Sains could get body dysmorphia from a robot.
Also, crazy thing too is this movie's 31 years old.
That's fucking depressing.
But just from a standpoint of a movie, how good does it still look for 31? Like,
it's gorgeous.
I loved your reaction because, again, I've watched this movie a gazillion times now, but I loved watching it with you because the moment they reveal Ed 209, he starts moving. You were like, oh shit!
Yeah,
with the stop motion.
I missed that. I like, from like the Adventures of Sinbad all the way up until like the T2. That's what I was used to, and when you see it like really, really effectively. It takes you back to a whole different era of cinematography, of special effects. Like, the people standing next to the stop motion have like this weird hairiness to them, like this like weird texture that you can almost like reach out and feel like velvet.
Yeah.
And
I believe Rob Bottin did a lot of the effects on this, and he's The Thing being one of the biggest of all, one of the greatest, in terms of practical effects you'll ever see.
Honestly, like, if you've seen The Thing and didn't know that was the same special effects coordinator, go back and watch the mutation scene. Go back and watch any of the body horror stuff. It's like, that effects team is so, them when you see their work.
And you know what the genius thing about, talk about The Thing for a second. The scene where the Thing dog goes into the kennel.
That's one of the first things I thought of when I saw Peter Weller's death.
And its face splits.
Yeah.
But here's the genius thing, and this saves you money. This is how genius it is, right? Not doing stop motion for the dog's head turning and having your hand be the puppet, so when it moves, it's organic. And if you go back and watch the scene where they all turn and like, what the fuck, and the dog turns as it's hissing, that will send chills down your spine because it is a guy's hand moving, and it is the most organic thing in the world. That stuff like that, and then also like talking about Murphy's murder in this, there's that shot and. You might not even notice it. You might notice it because, again, you can notice the difference between an actual human and
the dummy.
But the dummy looks still like it's amazing as it's turning. It's just his face, like his face is just, It
looks like solid molded bubble gum.
Yeah, and it's just this horrible expression on his face. And also, like,
total horror.
Again, Murphy, just the way he plays, just like, all right, you've just been shot into a million pieces.
Yeah,
scream.
We have to. I have to dissect the murder scene like shot for shot because, again, we have to reiterate that if you watched the film before the podcast, we saw the unrated Laserdisc version.
Yeah,
and I had never seen the extended murder before. The joy that that Ray Wise in particular and the obnoxious voiced guy that shows the partner his penis, the laughter from those guys. upon the reaction of him getting his hand completely blown off.
If we're keeping with the Jesus thing, the first thing that happens is he gets shot in the hand.
Hands nailed.
Yeah.
His hands are nailed.
And then his arm blown off.
Yeah. Yep. We're going anatomically correct because they do the legs after that. Holy crap. This is so on the nose.
I mean, there's, and again, RoboCop's one of those movies where when you watch it, you go to the extremes with it and you go, what the fuck is going on? But then we get all that, the horrible terribleness of Murphy's murder, right?
Yeah.
But then you have this this super it's a beautifully horrible shot of it zooming out, Murphy's dead lying in Lewis's arms and the blood trail, and it's just like this. But what movie is, what genre, what is going on with this movie?
Do you know what, if you really want to have your mind blown, look at that shot of Lewis holding Murphy and then look at the Renaissance painting Mary Magdalene holding Jesus.
Jesus Christ. Literal Jesus Christ. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
The only film that I can compare that violence to is the destruction of Jared Leto's face in Fight Club, where the reaction of the men watching it is what really makes it the most horrific, and the shot of his partner of Murphy's partner having to watch
behind the fence,
fence, not being able to do anything, but just watching the pure joy of the face on the men doing this to her brand new partner, is way more horrific than the actual violence, which is total, almost pornographic level viscera.
Well, the violence hits a point where it is become this excessive insanity.
Yeah,
to where
signature.
But
Verhoeven.
this is Paul Verhoeven's genius.
Yeah.
That's when you cut the Lewis's face,
mm-hmm.
and then you go, "Oh wait, in this world though, that's still real."
Yep.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, again watching this movie, every time you get to the murder scene, you never are okay with that. You know what I mean? That scene's never you could watch it a million times,
and it's never all right.
No, it's never gonna. It's never supposed to be either.
Which is so now we have to. I just feel obligated to do a little bit of juxtaposition.
Mm-hmm.
Let's rewind to the suit who gets no sympathy at all.
Yes.
You brought it up. Other podcasts, other shows have brought this up, but I didn't know to look for it, and when I was told to prime myself, it stands out so hard. The juxtaposition of basically a faceless suit getting the same exact treatment that Murphy does, but you just simply don't care as much about one character.
You don't care it much. You don't care it much. You don't care as much, and it's become this scene that people watch and they laugh at it. They're like, it's
genuinely hilarious.
Yeah,
like the reactions of the corporate board members, the way it happens, the way no
call
one
an ambulance,
fucking cares, call the paramedics. It's just, it is funny, but the first time it happens, especially if you're watching as a younger person, is just totally horrifying.
Well, again, you don't get it.
Yeah, you don't get why it just happened. Why did that happen, and why does no one care?
It's just the most violent thing in the world. It's like it takes Sonny's death in The Godfather to a whole new level, because this is just being ripped open, and Sonny's death's horrendous. But this is, you just sit there with it.
Yeah, the '80s accepted the challenge, and while we were watching this,
Verhoeven was the guy who was like, "I'll take that."
It's the only other scene that I compared it to was the escalator gunfight in Total Recall.
Verhoeven
again. And he just takes it to these levels where it's I'm going to make every one of these viewers feel uncomfortable one way or the other.
If you want the trilogy of masterful, violent, ultra-violent satire, it's RoboCop, Total Recall, Starship Troopers.
There it is, man.
And it's all by the same guy.
And they all have co-ed locker rooms for some really creepy, gross reason.
I'm reading, I've been talking about this a lot on the show, but I've slowly doing the Audible of the Starship Troopers book, which that cover is always drawn. I've always been drawn to it. It's this astoundingly beautiful, insane cover. But it's, the story goes with Paul Verhoeven that he read the first 2 chapters and was so bored that he had someone tell him the rest of the story, and he basically created this whole thing. Because the book and the movie are very, very different. And
is the book an anti-war film or an anti-war novel?
No.
Not at all. So,
No.
Again, Verhoeven subverting expectations of both the viewer, the original content, and the fans of that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, the original Starship Troopers book If you go to Barnes & Noble right now,
Mm-hmm.
because I've seen it there, you will pick it up and it'll say on it the controversial military sci-fi classic, because a lot of people see that book as fascist.
As like, I mean, so 6th grade Mike watching Starship Troopers for the first 20 minutes of the film. I'm like, yeah, I want to join the military. This looks awesome. These poor people of Buenos Aires need justice.
Yeah.
And then they get to the bug fight. I'm like, this is the scariest, most horrific thing. And I liked that soldier. And this is horrible.
Well, the thing about the book so far is that it's very much classroom education, sitting down and talking about the ethics of war and what it means to do this and that and blah, blah. It's very much that,
which he turned into the cutscenes.
Yes, there is very little combat in Starship Troopers. I will say the beginning of the book is like astounding. I love the first line. The first line of Starship Troopers, the book is, "I always get the drops before a shake, or I always get the shakes before a drop," which is a great way to start a book.
The Warrior
right?
Shakes,
1959, and he's basically creating the Space Marine. And so it's he goes into detail about a drop. And it's astounding. But again, it's one of those books that, like, if you saw the movie first, like I did, do not go in thinking you're going to get this ultraviolent satire.
Yeah.
It is not that.
And I think I would say the same thing about Verhoeven's work. Like, if you're going to go into the film expecting the book, it's
I think he was
a big middle finger to that whole thing.
Oh, yeah. I think he was very much... He hates the book. Does not like the book at all.
All right, so, and now... to go back to the first sentence I uttered when we started recording this, I think he's bringing that same disdain, that same energy to, like, American industrialism and corporatism to RoboCop. Like, the opening news segment of this film sends up the South African apartheid situation. Yep. It sends up terrorism.
Yep.
It sends up local politicians who then turn into terrorists and killers. And all of the newscasters do it with a happy smile and a thank you to their paid advertisers. And it's just like, Paul Verhoeven fucking hates you.
Can that only come from someone outside of America?
To see how they see it, yes.
Yeah.
I think so. Like, to the point that I still don't think a lot of my American friends actually get the point of RoboCop. I don't think they actually get the point of Starship Troopers.
What do you think they would, like, I know this might be like a loaded question, but, like, what do you think if you sat down with one of your friends or whatever who wouldn't understand RoboCop, how would they see RoboCop? Like, what would they think the message of RoboCop is?
Their first time seeing it?
Yeah.
Honestly, so, like, this is, okay, it's one of those 80s films where you just love it for the iconic imagery. It's Predator, it's RoboCop, Alien, which is, I mean, like, if you want to compare two films, like the foundation of, like, the beauty of movement and the iconic performances simply delivered by body language, it's Alien and RoboCop. Like, I think for a first-time viewer, that's going to be the thing that you latch onto if you don't know to look for this stuff. Younger viewers, anyway. I think someone our age now, especially in modern society in 2018, it would be pretty impossible to not see Donald Trump all over Dick Jones, to not see Steve Bannon all over his little lackey Red from that 70s show. Like, there, you have the agitator and the guy behind the scenes, and it's all to serve the better interest of the corporation, which is also the government, which is also the public service, and everybody is getting rich except for anyone that isn't them.
Except for RoboCop.
And RoboCop's doing all of their dirty work.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a bummer comparison to the way, like, I was trying to ask myself the question, is RoboCop anti-law enforcement? And no, it's not anti-law enforcement. It's anti-corporate militarization, and it tries to give a human angle to a person that has to do cold-blooded work. And again, I don't think American audiences got the point of that at all.
Is this a movie that changes, how do I say this diplomatically? Is this a movie that changes every 4 years or every 8 years?
Oh, yeah. No, I think...
In terms of how it's viewed, I mean,
Oh, man. So, like...
Or is that just up to the viewer?
I think a lot of the things that... Like, I think about myself. Eric Garner happened under Obama. Tamir Rice happened under Obama. A lot of the worst controversial police action, it happened under one of our most beloved presidents. It's the relationship between the police in America. I think that's something that changes with social progress, and that RoboCop was made in the height of the excessive Reagan era, where white businessmen were untouchable and seen as like the titans of everything, and they're just going to lift everybody up. And Verhoeven was like, hey, here's what it looks like when they do actually have total control and don't give two shits about you.
I think overall, this is a movie that is universal forever, like as a warning.
It's evergreenly terrifying.
Yes. I also think, and this may just be like me always trying to look for the more hero aspect of it, as from like a comic book fan or whatever, or whatever you want to call it, this is what happens when like a good cop trying to stand up to the corporation. Look what happens to this dude.
That's exactly it, man.
Like look what happens to Alex Murphy.
Oh my God, is RoboCop Serpico?
Yeah. Well,
the one cop.
Yeah. No, I mean Serpico. I mean, Jesus, could you imagine watching this? Like, do a class where it's like you watch Serpico and then you watch RoboCop,
or like Dog Day Afternoon.
Dog Day Afternoon, yeah. Just watch Pacino and then watch RoboCop. Any Pacino movie then RoboCop. Watch Heat. No, but I mean, it really is. I mean, like again, this is the guy that I keep stressing the fact that like he wanted to come to old Detroit to prove himself,
to do some good,
and he gets what he wants.
Just another social justice warrior.
Yeah. He gets what he
I couldn't help myself.
Yeah, Alex Murphy gets what he wants, but it's in the worst way possible.
Yeah, in the worst possible way.
But in the end of the day, RoboCop 2 has a great ending too. But I like that the last line of this movie called RoboCop is like, "What's your name, son?" He's like, "Murphy," and he smiles. Like I've been obsessed with this lately, and I've talked about it a lot. But like. How I am so obsessed with how a screenwriter will end the last line of a movie. Like that's so important. Like you can't fade out like a song.
Okay, like that is a huge thing, and like because we watched this on Laserdisc, that was inadvertently a running gag, and I had not taken into consideration that this film does actually just end very abruptly.
Yeah,
like,
it just Murphy. No.
That's it. Thank you for enjoying RoboCop.
And the RoboCop 2 has a really, kind of funny ending to it with the line, which I like a lot. But I'll save it for 2 because we could talk about it then. But I really like the way 2 ends, but it ends very suddenly as well. But it's a great last line. But yeah, man, Jesus.
I feel as though like
little Mecha Jesus,
big metal savior boy. I kind of feel like talking right now. I just realized that my old babysitter was kind of fucked up.
Your old baby? Oh, okay.
Like the film that I only really knew this as like a thing that I spent time with. The TV was on. Like I've seen that scene where that guy where RoboCop shoots that guy in the dick like 1,000 times, just like on the TV.
Did you ever see that photo that someone did? They took a picture. Some girl took a picture with Peter Weller at like a con, and her shirt says, "Hey, remember that time RoboCop shot the guy in the dick?"
I mean,
that's fantastic.
That's me now. And by the way, somebody said it to us before we started the show. If you're listening to this, you do have to watch our RoboCop remake, scene number 27. It is a send-up of that very specific scene, and I think you'll enjoy every moment of it. It's not safe for work. But
yeah, that was pretty. Yeah, I think you sent me that on Facebook. I made
sure that you saw that horror.
Yeah.
But it, like, again, like RoboCop, Predator, they had these big tent pole films in the 80s where it was just like, here's the poster, here's the memorabilia, here's the like it was marketed to kids. There was a cartoon, there were toys. I wanted to be down with RoboCop as a kid.
That is where RoboCop 3 suffers from that, because it was like, hey, we're going to make a rated R movie. No, you're not. We have a cartoon coming out in toys. It's PG-13.
Yeah.
And so that'll be really interesting, because RoboCop in 3 fights a militarized police force. Like he leaves the police to join the resistance to fight the military police.
RoboCop goes Captain America.
Yeah, exactly.
RoboCop the Winter Soldier.
RoboCop the Winter Soldier. But yeah, man. I mean, it's a movie that every time I watch, I dissect it more and more. You know, I see something new in it. You know, I love it for, like I said, and like we were talking about the visuals. I love it for the supposedly making the movie was a fucking nightmare. Everyone hated making it, but you know, but look what we got because of it.
Like watching this film, the thing that bugs me the most is imagining the frustration of the stuntmen.
Oh, Jesus.
The frustration of the actor getting acclimated with the suit.
Yes.
The makeup process, which had to have been a bummer every day of his life.
Yeah.
And how much did he sweat into his boots, do you think?
He lost, I want to say he lost up to 5 pounds a day.
And he
was a runner. Like Peter Weller, like that's one of the reasons it worked, because he's a slim guy.
Right.
But yeah, that suit didn't do any favors.
Not at all. And I think the more we get into the show, we should do who could have become RoboCop. Like if we can get any information on like potential choices. We don't have to do it now.
Mm-hmm.
But Weller owned this, but like Bruce Willis might have been RoboCop maybe. That would have been hysterical.
It would have been funny, but it wouldn't have been a good movie.
It would have been horrible.
Because what you would have got was... Because what Peter Weller never does in this movie, and he never does in 2, because again, that's the only time he plays him, is he never goes for the badass.
And actually, there aren't any laughs. Does he do anything for comedy? Like, haha, that was funny.
Wait till we get to 2. Wait till we get to 2, my friend.
Boy.
There is... Yes, there's a lot of comedy in 2. Some of it is like legitimately funny because it's just so absurd.
Right.
But 2 for me is, as just the primer as we start wrapping this up, 2 for me is very much a lot of swings and misses, and pacing is all over the place. But Jesus, there is some stuff in there there are some scenes in there that are fucking some of my favorite moments in RoboCop history. I will also say, as a primer, RoboCop's introduction in RoboCop 2 is potentially one of my favorite moments in any of the movies. It's so absurd.
It has been so long since I've seen RoboCop 2. I just have like a vague memory, which is the Ed 209, which is built up so hard in this first film. It's just disposed of very quickly.
Really not a thing. And then in 3, gets reprogrammed. But yeah, Ed 209's glory days are long gone.
Yeah, I'm. For the fans here, you're gonna, if you haven't noticed already, I am just gonna be the raw feed. Like
that's what we want, man.
I mean, I can't not see this in the lens of 2018 now, and I'm kind of glad that I don't have any romanticism about this franchise, because like knowing the troubled history of the films to come, it's gonna be good to just see, you know, how each one of these things play out. And things that didn't make it into this episode of the podcast, I'll buy that for $1.
Yeah.
That was Goofy, if you guys didn't know that. And the only other takeaways I have from this were those cop cars were pretty fucking terrible.
And they never get any better.
They never
they have
any
these
better.
shitty fucking cop cars, and they never get any better.
Yeah, for a company that bought all public service, they sure didn't put any investment into it or create any jobs like corporations say they will.
Yeah.
And this has been your Marxist talk with Mike.
Yeah, and the sad thing too is just like the cop cars never get any better, the movies never get any better.
They're like a metaphor for the franchise.
There is some stuff that I really dig into, and there is even some stuff in 3, and I have I cannot wait to get to the reboot.
I'm actually more excited for the reboot than I thought I would be, because like...
And I love Joel Kinnaman, and I love RoboCop, but I don't know if those things mix well. I don't know. We'll see, because like when I saw it originally in theaters, I was so relieved that it didn't suck that I was like, I dug it, you know?
Yeah.
And then I watched it a couple times, like, I don't know.
Because didn't RoboCop and Terminator Genesis come out at the same time? Or was
no,
like
Genesis was like a couple
bummers.
years later.
The one with Christian Bale.
Oh, RoboCop. No, that was before. That was way before. That was it's the trailer for Terminator 4, whatever it was called.
I don't even know the name of it. Salvation.
Terminator Salvation came out. The trailer for that dropped during The Dark Knight.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, well, all right. This has been Reminiscing with Mike's Bad Brain.
No, but hey, I think we have started an interesting discussion.
Yeah,
about RoboCop.
Yeah. I've never actually examined the flaws of a franchise like this before, and it's
Well, again, no flaws for this one because this is a perfect movie.
it
There's
is
no
God's
flaws.
personal favorite
Yeah,
film.
it's his personal favorite film. Yeah, so I am looking forward to, like I said, one of my favorite things about doing a podcast too is we have no idea how it's going to start and what potentially it's going to become as it goes on.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see what happens with that.
Maybe we'll be corporate executives by the end of this.
Maybe we'll be cyborgs.
I'll have a bespoke 3-piece pinstripe suit.
Yeah, if you don't come to the next recording dressed as Dick Jones in the end of this movie, I'm gonna be really pissed.
I think it has.
'Cause
to
I know you have.
I have a
some
Dick Jones suit.
Some Dick Jones.
I
Yeah,
actually
and then you got
own
a Dick Jones.
his Dick Jones suit.
Okay, yeah, that needs to happen for RoboCop 2, even though he's nowhere to be found in the movie because he's long dead.
And I do have to bring some pool noodles.
Yeah,
to use as my arms.
That's right.
Oh gosh.
All right. Any final thoughts as we sign off, Mike?
I just hope somebody was feeding him water. He just looked like he had really bad cotton mouth.
I'll show you a picture that's really funny after this that kind of sums up everything, but it's an audio podcast.
So much sympathy for Murphy's jaw.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're wrapping this one up. This was RoboCop, 1987, the perfect film, God's favorite movie, RoboCop.
I have been your co-host, Mike Sains. Find me on Instagram and Twitter, I guess. Please, it's not satisfying, I promise.
Yeah. No. None of our stuff is.
No.
Anyway, I'm Jake. Remember, kids, stay out of trouble.
This has been another Geek Out production. If you enjoyed what you heard, hey, we've got a special episode every Friday. Of course, there's the usual catching up show every Wednesday. And you get book club episodes just about every Tuesday these days. Thanks for listening.